with COVID-19. Businesses that are booming are mortuaries. So if you can put some money in a funeral home, you're going to make a ton of money. Have you heard about all of those bodies that are piling up? I'm not being facetious because those are people that are dying. But let's think about it. There are people that are making a ton of money that own funeral homes. Not every business is doing bad right now. So we got to think about the times that we're living in.
Yeah, and funeral homes don't ever have sales. I know that firsthand. It's like they go up every year, and you can sit there all you want and say you want a discount, and they're not offering any.
That's right. That's right. So, but yeah, so just in terms of favorites, yeah, so my favorites are really in the real economy and not necessarily Facebook or the FANG stocks that people often talk about, because we're on Facebook, and Facebook is really tremendously benefiting from the fact that people are at home because they're spending more time on social media, and they control not only Facebook, but they also control Instagram, which many teenagers don't realize, and they also control, I think, as a something, some sort of chat mechanism that they control. So they control quite a few things. And then Google is doing well. YouTube. How many people are going to YouTube for YouTube University and the live events? I just listened to a live show today with a politician. And so there are a lot of different ways that you can own a business that is benefiting from it. But the question is, are you going to benefit from owning that business? The business can be making money and you can't be. So the business can be profitable, but yet the investment can be unprofitable. So you got to think about that.
Talk a little bit about what you call the real economy, because most people think the real economy is full of stocks and bonds and mutual funds.
Sure. And there is a huge difference. I was asked this question before, sitting at the table having coffee with a guy, and I'll never forget. Yes, what is the real economy? And I said, well, the real economy is just that. It's real. It's where you and I live at. It's where we eat. It's where we drink. And it's where we transact business. But then on the other hand of the equation, there's the financial economy. The financial economy is where you go to buy stocks, bonds, mutual funds. It's where things are transacted, and it's purely money. The financial economy really doesn't exist. It's just a subset of the real economy. It's where people go to get financing for their businesses, to take a company public. It's where the investment bankers and the investment advisors, it's their domain where people are going to get money. But the real economy is just that. It's not fake. It's real. It's the economy that when you go to the grocery store and you're buying $300 of groceries like we are a week because everybody is at home and you're spending this money at the cash register, that's the real economy. And we need to pay attention to what's going on in the real economy, because that's what's going to affect our financial economy eventually. So if the real economy is sick, everything else is going to catch a cold and catch a flu and eventually die. So we got to make sure that we're taking care of the real economy and not necessarily paying so much attention to what's going on in the stock market. Because when you hear about the Dow Jones going up one day and down the next, that's what you call the financial economy. That's not the real economy. The Dow Jones theoretically,
at the end of the day, you're right. So that's not the real economy.
Yes, it's almost. I use the analogy in my first book.
That's right.
So it's 3 books in the series, and the first book that I wrote was called Most Sense: Money and Economic Sense Based on the Natural Laws of Momentum, but I revised it and now it's all called Gainology. And I talk about the real economy in the first book from the perspective of being like a odometer in your car. Have you ever had an emission test? Back in the day when you had an emission test, you had to put your tires on this machine that would spin, and they'd hook it up to your tailpipe. And if you looked at the emission test, the odometer would say that you're going, or speedometer is saying that you're doing 100 miles an hour or 30 miles an hour. But you know that you're just going through an emission test. And that's how the Dow Jones is. The Dow Jones can be going up, but you need to look out the window to make sure you're moving. Because most of the time you're not. And that's the difference between the real economy and not. When you're in the car and you're moving, that's the real economy, because you can tell by the milepost that you pass. But then when you look at the financial economy, you're just getting an emissions test. Your wheels could be spinning and you could not be going anywhere.
Okay, so I just sent going to pause a minute. I just sent a message through Facebook to let you guys know that we are live, and it is on my regular Stephanie Wilson-Coleman page. There's been a little change, but that page is probably easier to find. And I'm getting messages now, and I just want people to know that don't call me, send a message, type it on Facebook. I've got Facebook open so I can see your questions. If you have questions that you would like to ask Eric and we can get to those questions. So I'm going to send a message and say, can't talk, sorry, on TV. So this is so much fun. I didn't think it was going to be this much fun. And
it's a real task, navigating, looking at questions, answering, asking questions.
Yeah.
I would not want to be in the hot seat where you're at right now.
So, I think I feel better. I got my COVID-19 hairdo. I'm doing good because I've been self-quarantined, following the rules. So
hey, natural is good.
Easy to maintain too, you know. So we have a lot of people in Facebook and through Facebook feeds and on the television set. They're telling us in various commercials things that we can do if we can't pay our bills. And what you do if you don't have any savings. And I always say there's never a bad time to start saving. Every time, no matter, every situation is a good time to save. So what would your advice be for people who are experiencing those things right now?
I would say take advantage of every forbearance and anything that's not going to negatively affect you in the long term. I've talked to people that are in the position to pay their bills, but because of the uncertainty related with the economy, we don't know how long this virus is going to extend. The economy eventually is going to open up, but that doesn't mean that people are going to want to go out and shop because the virus can still be lingering around and we don't have what you call herd immunity. So I think that if you are offered a program where, say, for instance, you got a mortgage and you don't know that you're going to have a job in 3 months and you need to conserve cash, maybe you need to call that lender and ask them for forgiveness for the next 3 months. Because I understand that most lenders are granting a 90-day reprieve without even asking for any paperwork to necessarily document that you have been challenged from this economy. So credit card companies, they're also doing the same thing. They're being very lenient. Now, one of the things that I would consider, I've heard mixed reviews on whether or not this delayed payments is going to be reflected on your credit report. From everything that I've been told, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian are going to be reporting that you're not making your payments. So if you're really concerned about your credit score, maybe you need to keep it up, because, you know, when a credit score drops beneath a certain limit, that could affect the interest rates, that could affect different lending programs. It could also affect your job, which in this environment, this is very unique. You missing some payments right now is not going to be something that is abnormal. There are a lot of people asking for deferments on student loans, credit cards, house payments, auto payments. And what this is an example of the fact that our country is in too much debt. I mean, we just created like $7 trillion worth of debt. So now we're over $25 trillion in national debt, and we have no way of actually paying for it. And so, I mean, it's in this time, you need to figure out whatever you can do to reduce your expenses. You may have to think about, if you got multiple cars and you will be working from home and somebody else isn't, maybe you should be returning one of those cars, so you can preserve some cash flow.
That's a good idea. What other kinds of things should people consider? So you're right, returning a car if someone's working from home.
That's right. And just prioritizing your expenses. This is a great time to really just look at where all of your money is going. Maybe you got some life insurance, which I really recommend in this environment, that everybody, we don't know who's going to get this disease. I mean, we can walk around in an N95 and K95 mask and exercise all of the precautions we can, and
get
then
hit
hear
by a
one of
car.
our teenagers come in the house. Yeah, get hit by a car, or a teenager comes in the house that just thinks they're Superman and gives us the disease. So we got to kick them out of the house. But maybe you're spending too much on some of the life insurance you have, because maybe you've got some whole life insurance and it's developing a cash value, but maybe you're paying way too much for it. Maybe you should be looking at some sort of level term or variable life policy where the premiums are going to be cheaper. I wouldn't leave anything or any stone unturned. Look at everything that you can possibly do to reduce your expenses and still live life. Because you shouldn't just be working to pay bills. You should be, the most important thing, and I believe Stephanie will certainly agree with this, we all at some point are going to pass. I mean, no matter what happens, unless Jesus comes tomorrow and the world ends, we're all going to pass. But one of the things that we should really be focusing on is not passing, but living. That's one of the greatest fears that I have, is not necessarily passing away, but not living my life to the fullest and doing everything that God has got me to do. So we don't want to just be living just to pay bills. We don't want to be just living just to go to a 9-to-5 that we're not happy about. If you're not happy about your job and you're dreading the day that the government lifts this stay-at-home order, and you're going to be going back to the 9-to-5, use this time to find something that you're passionate about and figure out how to make some money doing it. So that you don't have to go back to that situation. Because it's actually better for the environment when you're exercising your gifts and we get a chance to see you shine. We got few stars out there. We need some more.
Yep, we have.
So those are some of my suggestions.
Right, a lot of us are trying to die with our gifts still in, our music still inside of us, and that's not what we're put here for. Now, we talked about paying bills, but also focusing on living life too. So I know that a lot of people just talk about paying bills, and that can be just a psychological downer. You have to do something for yourself. But one of the things we want you to do for yourself is to get some life insurance, because tomorrow's not promised.
That's right. And
Eric has given you a couple examples of what to look for in life insurance. So as you're looking for life insurance, what about a will? People need to take care of their assets after they passed or transitioned on to another experience or away from this experience. So what kinds of things should people consider in a will, and do they need to talk to a lawyer about it? Or
Sure. Right. And I'm a CPA by profession, so I'm not giving you legal advice, but I think everybody knows that we should have some sort of last will and testament. And in addition to a last will and testament, because a will can be challenged in court. If you have assets that you want to leave to certain people and you know who they are, maybe you should put those in a trust and then name them as a beneficiary. That's something that people can't contest. So one of the things that's popular and it's growing in popularity around the country is a land trust. You can put, say, for instance, your house in a land trust. And the moment that you pass, it can pass directly to whoever you want as a beneficiary. It's not going to be contested. And then in regards to a will is really important, because you can have all of these other assets, financial accounts that you have with banks, investment banks, commercial banks, insurance policies. Look at the beneficiaries that you've got named on all of your policies, all of your pensions. Go down that list on a periodic basis. It could be every spring, do a spring cleaning. If somebody made you mad, take them off as a beneficiary because they're not doing something. But you don't just set your beneficiaries also, and say, for instance, naming your children. Well, what happens if one of your children passes, but then you got grandchildren, and you want to make sure that the children that are associated with that particular child are going to be the beneficiary of what you have. So you have to think about it, saying that I'm naming, say, for instance, Eric, my son Eric, my daughter Jalen, and all of my children. But secondarily, we should say and their descendants. And that way, everybody is covered, nobody is left out, and it can all be an equal distribution like you want. So you got to think about the wording that you have in your life insurance policies, who the beneficiaries are, in your pensions. Think about who your beneficiaries are, all of the stuff in your will. All of this stuff has got to be carefully articulated, and don't hide it. If you got a will, make sure people know where it's at. I mean, put it on record somewhere in a safe deposit box. Don't have them tearing up your house or creating a document because, oh, you know, mama didn't have a will, so we're all going to get together and we're going to create a will. And we're just not going to contest it because we don't want to go to court. That stuff happens. But if you're the parent, think about who you want to benefit from all your labor. And don't worry about what happens. I mean, be concerned about what happens after you, but you don't know what they're going to do with the money. You just know you did your job. You're making sure, and it's up to them to take it to the next level and do the right thing. And if we train them right, they will do what's right most of the time.
And I would recommend you look at your beneficiaries once a year, especially because some of us are in and out of relationships, and if you're not careful, that ex-husband that treated you really, really badly 10 years ago, you've been divorced from, and he's still your beneficiary. He'll get you all your insurance money when you die. That's right. I've got a girlfriend who's an attorney that says she runs into that more than you can imagine. So look at the beneficiaries every year, get them changed. I know it's a tedious process, but give yourself a day once a year when that's what you're going to do, so that, as Eric said, you're leaving things where you want them to go and at that particular time. Now, if you change your mind 6 months later, change your beneficiary. That's
right. And that's for every single financial asset and asset that you own. You should really be considering who the beneficiaries are, because every time you have a job and you sign up, saying all of the benefits package, they are asking you about your beneficiaries. So when you change your will, also go to your employer and say, I need to change who my beneficiaries are at the employer. And for God's sake, I was talking to somebody the other day. They said that their job asked them to name them as a beneficiary on their policy. I'm like, that's a moral hazard. They're going to try to kill you on the job and get the insurance. So do not name your employer as the beneficiary. I said, go and change that tomorrow. They're about to take you out.
That's right. Surprised they made it home.
Right. I couldn't. When she told me that, I'm like, what? I've never heard of that.
I haven't either. Surely they were just playing. It had to be. They were just playing. It's like, I did not.
They were serious. And she did it. That was the thing that concerned me. Like, no, go change that tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, my God. I thought that was wise. And my big topic, next question, is ways to reduce your debt. So we talked about looking at automobile expenses. If you've got several automobiles, but someone's working from home, then maybe you could sell one automobile. What are some of the other ideas that we could talk about that people can use to reduce their spending and get rid of some debt?
Right. So I have talked to people, and oftentimes people they can be very good at budgeting and looking at where all of the excess fat is at. And often what it often boils down to is making a concerted effort to make some more money. Because when you look at the disproportionate wealth distribution in society, if you earn about $150,000, you're probably in the top 5-10% of the United States in terms of let's see, my internet is unstable. You're about in the top 5% or 10% of the nation in terms of income earners. And I think that, yes, we need to reduce our expenses. We need to reduce the amount of interest that we're paying. So if you got interest on a credit card and you're paying 19%, and you have the ability to open up another credit card that will give you 0% interest for 1 year, you need to open that credit card up and transfer all of your balances. And now you just saved all of the interest expense that you were paying, and that can help you accelerate the debt. Yes, so we also need to be snowballing debt. So paying off the smallest debt first so we can have some sort of self-achievement. And then going from that smallest debt, after we've done that, congratulate ourselves. Go get an ice cream, go take a walk around the park, pat yourself on the back because you did a good job. But then you tackle the next debt after that, and the next smallest debt, because now you're going to see the progress, and you're going to have a sense of accomplishment, and it's going to want you, encourage you to continue paying off the debt because you're making progress. So yes, snowball your debt, reduce your interest rates. If you got a mortgage right now and you still got a source of income, banks are still refinancing. I don't know that interest rates are going to get much lower than they are. But if you got a 5% interest rate and you can get a 2% interest rate on a mortgage, you should probably refinance that mortgage if you're early in the process. Pay attention to the closing costs, because that's also going to reduce your monthly payment, and you can use that savings to reduce your principal and get out of debt much faster. So there are a number of things that we can do to reduce our debt in an accelerated fashion. But one of the things that I don't want you to overlook is the fact that more of us in society can earn more than we are. And we need to be looking at how can we increase our passive income? What can we be doing? If you're at home right now, what skill set can you be improving so that when you go back to work, your employer just sees you as absolutely invaluable, and you tell them, look, I'm walking if you don't give me some more money because I'm worth more than what you're paying me. And when you're really valuable, they will pay you more. So increase your skill set. And once you're earning that additional money, do like the empowerment doctor did. I'm telling her business and how she has earned money, but she's been living off of money that she probably made in her 30s. So she saved all of the money that she's earned with each additional paycheck. She hasn't lived off that additional money. She's used that to improve her standard of living and improve her net worth. So,
my sister want to retire soon.
Yes.
So,
and your practices have worked.
I've got some questions on Facebook. I figured out how to get to them. So I expected this nice little tickler on the side, but that's not happening. What about real estate investments?
Real estate investments are great. If you're interested in real estate investments, I've done some seminars on the taxation benefits of real estate investments. I've wholesaled investments before there was such a term called wholesaling investments. It's a great opportunity, but it's also a great risk if you don't know how to value investments properly. So it goes back to the same thing. You can make money in just about anything if you value an investment properly.
So what's the name of that book they need to get so that they can read about valuing investments?
Sure. It's the second book in my series called The Secret to Making Money While You Sleep. And you can get that on my website at conduitadvisors.com, or Conduit Can Do It. Go to conduitcandoit.com and it'll get you to my website. And you'll see all of the books. And it's the second book in the series that deals with how do you value investments. And one of my readers, when she read it, she said, every woman needs to know Mr. ASP. I think every man needs to know it too. But every woman definitely needs to know, because that describes what your particular investment vehicles are, what your investment options are.
So let's get back to real estate. So I know you can buy real estate straight out, but are there is there like a mutual fund or mutual investment where you can contribute to that fund and buy real estate that way? That way you're not the only person buying that two flat.
Yeah, right. So when
what do you think about those?
Right. So when you're dealing with two flats, there's institutional grade real estate investments, and then there are also investments for non-institutions. When you're talking about a two flat, that's almost like that is a single family residence. Anything up to 4 units is considered a single family residence with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So, but if you wanted to invest on a large scale, one of the options that the public is offered through retail investments is something called a REIT, a real estate investment trust. And all a real estate investment trust is something that is an investment. Well, how do I describe this? It's basically a company that has been granted the right to exclusively invest in real estate and not be taxed, so long as 90% of its income is distributed to the shareholders of the corporation. So real estate investment trusts are a popular way for retail investors to invest. I discourage investing in a lot of real estate investment trusts because you're really not making much money. Because one, what did it say? It said that 90% of the profits from the real estate investment trust must go to the shareholders. Well, profits come after expenses. That means after paying these bloated salaries for the CEOs and all of the kickbacks that they're paying, so you're getting the leftovers, and they're giving you 90% of what they've taken the rest of it. So I don't necessarily encourage that. If you want to invest in real estate, you need to contact me at 877-CONDUIT, 877-266-3848, because there are better ways to doing it. And it's just, but with real estate, you have to be willing to, sometimes you got to be patient. You got to understand with any investment, there's a risk of loss. In real estate, although it may not be as cyclical as the stock market, and certainly not as liquid as paper or stocks, you can make a ton of money, and you can also lose a ton of money. I know people that have been in both scenarios. I've always made money with my real estate investments. And let me knock on some wood and knock on some other stuff.
You should have some wood.
Right.
So, what if you don't have any savings right now? Some people had savings, 3 months savings, and then this hit. And I think people thought we were going to get back into action sooner. But what's happened is a lot of the small businesses are actually 24% of those are projected to not be able to return because of the downturn in the market. And 54% of the small businesses now are actually closed. So what do you do when you don't have any savings, either personally or even as a business owner?
Right. Well, and that's tough because I've been in that situation, and I'm telling you, it's one of the worst feelings in the world to be broke. And you have children, and children don't necessarily understand broke. They just understand we don't have any milk. And we don't have, we can't go to the movies, and we can't get on whatever channel they want to get on because the cable has been cut off. So I think it's really tough. And I think if you don't have any savings, I think the focus should be making sure that you still have some cash flow. Because even without savings, you've got cash flow. You should be able to at least maintain where you're at or not fall as far as you possibly can. So, and if you do have some extra money, of course, save it and make the right decision. But if you don't have savings, it's too late to kick yourself. You got to just really learn from this experience. And when things do turn around, make sure that don't think that there's not going to be a rainy day. And one of the things I like to use to describe this, I don't know if you all have ever watched those shows called the Doomsday Preppers, where these people, they've got enough food to last 2 years in their basement. They have water filtration systems. They've got military meals that are dehydrated, that'll last for 50 years and taste like dog food. But they went to the extreme in preparing for the worst case scenario. And now we have this situation where nobody has N95 masks. Well, guess what? They've got N95 masks, enough for their whole family to last for years. So we don't want to go back to the point where after this crisis ends or subsides that we feel like everything is okay and I don't have to put 3 months of savings aside. Because maybe from this experience, based on what Stephanie has said, there have been a number of people that have had 3 months of savings. And most of the country started going on lockdown in March. So you got March, then you got April, and now we're in May. So if you had 3 months of savings, you're about to be out of money.
Exactly.
Right.
And Illinois is not scheduled to open for maybe another 6 weeks.
Exactly. Right. So in those situations, one of the things that we can learn from this is that maybe 3 months savings is not enough. It should be in normal situations, but we need to think about is 3 months of savings relative to what? That 3 months of savings is relative to our current expenses. So maybe we need to be adjusting our expenses. If you're living in a high rise in downtown Chicago and maybe you don't like that, move out to the suburbs, move someplace where it's less expensive. If you're on the West Coast and can't afford to live in Beverly Hills anymore, and you are tired of faking it until you make it, go ahead and move someplace else that it has a lower cost of living, and you can actually start putting more money aside. And then once you have enough money, you can always move back to those areas. But more than likely you won't, because you'd be like, no, I like the financial security more than I do the address, that I have.
Yeah. And people can, as you said, I don't think we look through our expenses enough. So and as I always say, are you paying for too much internet? Are you paying for too much data? Some people like the biggest, best, loudest thing. So you look at your internet bill and you're paying for channels you don't watch, channels you've never watched, channels you still don't watch, because sometimes you pay for channels because you say, well, just in case I'm stuck at home. Where you're stuck at home and you're still not watching Showtime. You're watching Netflix or Hulu. So why are you paying for Showtime and for HBO? So get rid of those things that you are not using now. And don't let the people make you feel bad. And if they tell you that they can't give you a discount, then tell them that you want to cancel until you can get something you can afford to pay. And they'll agree that they can help you out a little bit, but you do have to be persistent. And look at your cell phone cost. Do you need that much data? Are you sending that much email? And I recently had to do some upgrades to a computer and realized that I had programs on here that I hadn't used forever. So watch the programs you buy even, or your little gadgets, because that's an expense too. So just try to get down to what you really need. And as you're going through cleaning and purging, as I always say, every movement and everything is a spiritual movement. And once you create a vacuum, you create a need, the universe comes in and fills it up. But right now, as Reverend Evelyn Boyd would say, if 6 semi-trucks came up with everything you ever wanted, where would you put it? So it's a great time to spend your time getting organized around the house and getting rid of some of those things. It keeps your mind thinking about what you don't have and what you can't do. And then your mind starts to think about all of the things that you do have and what you can do with what you can do right now.
That's right. Yeah, and I like what Jesus said. Jesus said, life does not consist of the abundance of things. Too often we think that, that person is really living because they have a house in Malibu, they have a mansion, they have a jet. And oftentimes people with a lot of material things, they can be some of the most miserable people on the planet because they don't have the things that are really important, like people that are really interested in them and not just the things that they have. They don't necessarily have real friends. They may have a lot of money but don't have anybody that they can trust. They may be single and feel like, well, I can't marry anybody because they just want me for my money. So we can't just be focused on things, because they can take away your things, but at the end of the day, you shouldn't be defined by your things, by what you wear and what kind of house you live in and what you drive. If that's the case, something's wrong with your values. And I say that with a not out of being judgmental, but I just think that we should really consider that, because if you lose all of that, does that mean you should just jump off the bridge? No, we're way more than the things that we have.
Yes, we are. We are valuable.
Yes.
One of the questions coming through the Facebook feed is, can you give us a plan to start over? So you've lost everything. You've lost the one thing you loved. You've lost your business or a job you loved. And you've gone through your emergency savings. How should you start over?
You start from where you're at, most importantly. Don't start from where you want to be. You got to start exactly where you're at. And then secondly, you have to think about where you want to be. And then reverse engineer it. If you want to be in 5 years retired and able to live on a beach somewhere, start retracing what do you have to do so that you can achieve that lifestyle. It may not necessarily mean that you're going to have a lot of money, because maybe you'll live on an island, you're going to be a boat captain for somebody else and just having some fun on the island. But start from where you're at. I have certainly been there where I've lost some money with due to business decisions that I made initially, just not being happy with what I was doing at a very early age, and ended up losing a lot of money. And I didn't come from a family with a lot of money, so I couldn't ask anybody to bail me out. So I had to start all over again. And essentially what I'm saying to you is I had to start from where I was at, and I had to use what I had, not necessarily what I wanted. Now, I could develop the skills that I wanted, but I had to start where I was at and with the skill set that I had. And when I started using that and putting all of my effort into actually getting ahead and gaining momentum and making baby steps. Sometimes we want to do things and we just think about the real big things that we want to do. But we got to break those things down like they did at NASA. When NASA wanted to go out to the moon, they didn't just build one rocket for it because they realized they couldn't build one rocket with enough fuel and propellant to just launch from Florida and go all the way to the moon. They had to break that rocket up into stages. And that's how we have to be with our life. Start where you're at, and that's stage one. Then stage two, once you get to the next milestone, you kick off that booster rocket from that and you go to stage three. And before you know it, you're at stage 5, which could be your goal. And then once you reach your goal, sometimes you'll say, well, maybe this was too easy. Maybe my goals were too low. So sometimes I think that's a real common thing. We may set goals and attain them and realize that those goals are not sufficient or that we could have done more. You have to be honest with yourself and don't set goals that are too low for yourself. You want to set goals that are going to challenge you. If you need to learn a foreign language, and I could go on, but hopefully that answers your question.
And I'd like to add that when people start where you are, you've got something that you do that's valuable. And sometimes we just do what we do so much, we don't see the value in it because we do it. So ask yourself, what is the thing that you do that others are always seeking your advice for or your guidance for? Why do people call you? And what do they ask you to do? That's the things that you're good with. So you never start with nothing. Maybe you just don't have money, or maybe you just don't have, clients. Maybe you just don't have that, but you have those gifts. Start there, and you already know people. So find out who can use those gifts and have a conversation with them, because you have some gifts. We all came here with gifts, with things that we do very well that others don't do. And don't play that down. But like I said, we forget because it's what we do. That's right. It's what we do. We're used to it. And reach out to other people and trade those gifts for money, for work. Use those gifts for that. So start there. There's always a place to start. And what I've learned is however you're handling your money now in the midst of this crisis, and whatever you're doing now, those are the things that you need to do when you're no longer in a crisis. So if you're cutting back on eating out now, you need to cut back on eating out when you're not in a crisis. If you're exercising twice a day now, you need to exercise twice a day when you're not in a crisis. If you're doing your price checking, if you're checking prices on things that you buy before you buy them now, those are things that you should do when you're not in a crisis. So I always think financial crises teach us a lot of great things, and it help us to use and learn a lot of great habits. So
those are excellent tips. And one of the things too I wanted to add, Stephanie, because you were talking about gifts. And I think it's really important that we exercise our gifts. And the Bible says something to the effect that a man's gifts are what'll make room for him. It doesn't mean it's your license. It doesn't mean that it's your job. It doesn't mean that it's your gift. It's your innate talent, something that you can just do naturally. It could be art. It could be math.
Right.
It could be, we all have our little different gifts. And if you really want to get ahead in society, you got to exploit your gift.
Right.
Let people exploit you while you're making some money using your gift. And before you know it, people will be knocking on your door. Hey, can you do this? Can you do that? Once people know this is your gift. And these things that Stephanie is saying, that's so true. If you had to cut back right now, and you found some things that are totally unnecessary that you can live without, well, as soon as you get some money, don't go back to that thing. Yes, that's going to affect the economy down the road. People not eating out as much as possible. But why we have $30,000 and $40,000 in the kitchen and nobody can use the stove?
What do you say? $30,000 to $40,000 in the kitchen and nobody can use the stove.
That's right. I mean, you have people that have these elaborate houses, and the thing that sells a house are the kitchen and bathrooms. Everyone's going to use the bathroom by default. But we got these expensive kitchens and can't nobody cook. You ordering out all this stuff is wrong.
Well, during this COVID-19, I'm figured out I can cook, right?
Right.
I figured out I knew how to cook. It's like, I'm about ready to say, you need to find your work stomach because you wasn't coming home for meals twice a day. But you are right. Everyone has a fully stocked kitchen and nobody cooks. So learn to cook something.
That's right.
That's right. And don't buy every meal out because we can't now. And you can, and that will be a way you can start your savings too. Let me see. Let me check. Let me see. I got. I think I've got all of the questions answered. We have quite a few viewers, and I want to thank you guys for watching us. I think this is fantastic. We've got like 9 minutes left before we're done. So, let me see. I always have questions. So, there are some people whose credit is really bad right now, and they don't have any money, and they can't get a bank account. How do they start to save? What do they do? Are those?
They don't have a bank account.
They don't have a bank account. Are those online accounts we see about any good? Are they trustworthy?
Right. So when you're dealing with banking, basically, particularly when they're FDIC insured, they're all basically the same. The difference that you're going to experience, say for instance, if you've got to transact some business, you got to use an ATM. If that bank doesn't have access to the ATM, are you going to be paying non-user ATM fees? So you have to think about how you're going to be able to access your money other than just writing checks, using quick pay and various activities when you're outside of that area. Because the online institutions may offer you a slightly higher interest rate because they have lower operating expenses. But what's the difference between 0.5% in an interest rate and 1%? Both of them aren't keeping up with inflation. so you want to do better than inflation. So it's not about how much interest they're paying, because none of them are paying enough to compensate you for the money that you're losing through inflation.
And the 25 cents you have to pay for every transaction, or 50 cents on every transaction.
Right. So you want to think about the convenience. You want to make sure that it's a sound financial institution. Banking is the only people that we give money, strangers give money to strangers. It's the only institution on the planet where we willingly just give our money to a stranger. And that's because it's FDIC insured. Well, we got to think about it. Is this bank making good loans? Because if it goes bankrupt and you've got over $250,000 in it, you're going to lose some money through the FDIC insurance.
FDIC insurance, right?
Right. So you got to think about, is this a really sound bank? Yes, they may be all involved in the community, but if they're making loans to people that don't have the ability to repay, you just can kiss your money goodbye. So.
No, I'm big on tithing, right? That's my story. I was homeless, and I swear tithing saved my life. That's what saved my life. I'm big on tithing. And I believe, and I even believe more today, that you need to give what it is you need. So, so in this contraction, though, people seem, in some instances, people are giving more, but in some instances, people are not giving as much anymore. I think that we need to find a way to give. If you don't have money, you've got talents, as we talked about, and skills, as we talked about too. So we have to figure out a way that maybe we can tithe our talents or some of our skills in order to get through this. So I know people are running a little afraid, but the universe that we live in, and we didn't create ourselves, there's a higher power that created us, who is perfectly capable of taking care of all of our needs, provided we, preach, I know, no. Provided we do some of the basic things that Eric reminded us of, is that start where you are, use your talents. And remember, there's stories in the Bible about the tree that didn't use its talents. Remember, it didn't grow and prosper, and it was destroyed. So use your talents, because you will lose your talents. So, and if you don't know what they are, I've already told you to ask yourself, what do people call you for? And then ask yourself, what would you do for free? Because you're doing it anyway. And that's your talent. So figure out what that is so that you can get yourself back up on your feet. And then get to Eric's website. What's your website again? Because everyone's looking at stocks. Where's that book?
Yeah, conduitcandoit.com will get you to my website, or just go to conduitadvisors.com.
Great.
CONDUIT.
We've got like 4 minutes left. We've got a quick question. What about starting a new business to support your gifts?
That is one of the best ideas. We need more. I love entrepreneurs. That's why I deal with business owners, because I love that energy. Some people will see the glasses half full, and others see it half empty. Entrepreneurs see it as half full. They see opportunities when other people make excuses. So I believe that is one of the best things you can do. And one of the things, what's going to happen is, once you start that business, you're going to have to decide who you're going to serve. Because you'll get to the point where the business, you can see that it's making progress and it's moving, but maybe you don't have enough time to devote to get it to where it needs to be. So that's where you're going to have to make the decision. Am I going to continue working for the man because I know he's providing the paycheck, or am I going to believe God, who's going to open up the doors and and says he's going to meet all of my needs? So I think business is great, but you also have to make sure that you have a sound plan and a business that will be able to sustain you. Sometimes you don't necessarily know that. There are people that have stepped out and say, I'm going to be an artist, and I'm just believing God that everything is going to be met. And they may end up waiting tables and stuff like that. Everybody has some sort of story like that often, but don't despise small beginnings, and just keep working, having faith, and things will turn around. You got to have some great people on your side that's giving you some advice that's going to help you make profitable business decisions. And that's what I do. I'm a CPA by profession. I help people make profitable business decisions with their money, because it excites me to see people making more money. It's a privilege to work with. Starting a business, I think that is great. Do it while you got the time right now. Don't wait till tomorrow. Do it today. Go to the website and incorporate your business, form an LLC, get the employer identification number, and you don't even need that. Just get started. Don't put all of these barriers in front of you. Just start the business, and everything else you can take care of later.
Because I learned you can actually wait to the end of the year to get your EIN number, and it all counts. And you send all that stuff to Eric, and he'll figure out how to work around them sins. It'll be okay. So
I hope the IRS is not listening.
No, so don't let it be a barrier. You don't have to do everything today. You got to get the idea. Right. You got to get it. You got to get it incorporated or get an LLC. That's important. But don't let all that other stuff be your barrier, because you can get it done. And as long as you have everything in place by the end of the year, you'll be in good shape.
That's right. And one of the misconceptions that people have is, because I have clients that come to me all the time, can you start my LLC? Can you start my corporation? And yes, I can certainly help you organize your businesses in various states around the country. But that, just because you got a piece of paper saying that you organize in the state of Illinois, Indiana, Nevada, or Delaware, that doesn't mean you're in business. What indicates that you're in business is that you're actually handling your business, and that you're taking care of business and doing what's necessary for that business to prosper. And with that, we're going to say thank you, Eric. We are out of time. I want to thank people who joined us. Thank you, Albert Riverflows Jackson, Lester Coleman, Patricia Reski, Keith McDonald, Shannon Holman, and all of the future people. Kimberly Williams. I mean, the list is long.
Venus Austin. John. Hi, Javaris. How you doing? Hi, Revenue. Cool. And all the other millions that I didn't get to. So.
And I'm going to repost it on my page, so a whole bunch of people are going to be saying some things there too.
That's right. Cool. So, as I always say when I end the show, do not go gently into that good night. Find a hill worth dying and take it. Be the person that you've been waiting for and make today so awesome that yesterday gets jealous, and above all else, do it your way. I want you to be inspired and to further notice, celebrate everything. I'm Stephanie Wilson-Coleman, the Empowerment Doctor, and life is too short to drink cheap champagne. Thank you, Eric January, Mr. CPA, the Einstein of Finance, for making this a great show. Until next time.
I appreciate you.
Right. Bye, guys.